we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever wanted to reach out to the podcast for any reason, wanted to come on as a guest, or, give me an idea for a topic, or let me know how you feel about an episode, hit us up in the comments, or reach out to us anytime on the DMs at the Bigmark Pod or at the Bigmark Podcast on Twitter or Instagram. This is the best way you could possibly support the podcast. If you're wondering how, by watching, telling a friend, spreading the word, the good word about the Bigmark podcast. If you did want to go that extra mile, again, hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Follow along wherever else you're listening, and then check out our patreon.com/Bigmark podcast if you want to go that extra mile too. So thank you all so much for being here today, tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're listening to this. I'm really excited about this episode because I literally just saw this movie, so it's like super fresh, and it's one of these movies where I feel the story behind it is fascinating, of course, but the overall tale itself deserves a little bit of love, right? So I'm pretty sure at some point I've actually even talked about maybe Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in the past, because I think it's a fascinating book. It's one of the greatest books. I mean, there's so much information on that, but obviously today we're going to be talking mostly about the new movie Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro, which is incredible, really well done. A great adaptation of Mary Shelley's original story. She wrote it when she was like 18, turning 19. Like, she was young. She was with Lord Byron and oh my gosh, what's Buddy's name? What was Mary Shelley's friggin' come on, Marky. Percy Shelley. It was her husband, not boyfriend, but husband Percy Shelley, which is actually how she released Frankenstein originally. Was actually under his name because she couldn't release it as a woman, or it wasn't a good idea, or no one was going to read it, whatever the fuck, some type of old school bullshit. But she wrote in 1818, which is fucking wild, and it was an amazing story. And I remember in grade 12 English, which was actually a bummer ass class because I had this teacher. I literally can't remember her name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She had some kind of weird beef against me. I don't know. Growing up, playing sports my whole life, I was obviously considered a jock and pretty proud to be one in most aspects of it. Obviously, there's some shitty parts about being a jock, but there are some people who don't really understand it and don't think it's cool. Like, I had I've mentioned it before, but I had a chemistry teacher in high school literally bring me aside after class and be like, athletes will never do as well as academics. And I don't know if he was trying to encourage me to stop playing sports and just like do school or whatever, but I was just like, man, like, that's really great to hear, sir. Thank you for that. Whatever. I don't know. And again, like, you don't know, did these teachers get like fucking stuffed in lockers by jocks and stuff, and now they just think we're all the fucking same and fuck them, and who knows, right? Like, yes, unfortunately, that dichotomy existed, throughout whatever, I don't know how long in history, but at least when my teachers would have been in school, of like the nerd and the jock and the different cliques and the fucking people and the burnouts and the music nerds and whatever the fuck. But I don't know. I lived a life where I tried to be a part of everything. I didn't want to believe in those fucking walls that we put up between each other, and and think that I wasn't allowed in certain areas just because of my previous experience. How the fuck else, especially when you're young, you get away with this shit, in my opinion, but doesn't matter. How else are you supposed to ingratiate yourself into a new community without trying to be a part of that community? And anybody who, is pushing those people out and bigoted or trying to, you know, not allow certain people into their group because they're different. You're just narrowing your scope of what is possible. And, you know, I believe that we're better off having a wide array of knowledge. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to know, you know, again, I believe that the more knowledge, the better. The more different places and far reaches of the map you can kind of pull those things to. If it's the fucking Pepe Sylvia map on the wall with all the pictures and the documents, if those strings I believe those strings need to be long as fuck. Connect the dots, make it the weird fucking connections that don't exist. And like the only way you're going to do that is by stepping out and crossing these invisible barriers that we've created. So anyway, but some people believe in those barriers a little bit more, and they see people as others instead of reflections of themselves. And again, I had that my chemistry teacher and this English teacher, again, unfortunately, both in the same year in grade 12, which is a fucking important year trying to go to university, in fact. And it's like, man, they couldn't even fucking cut me some slack. So whatever. Fuck these two teachers. But, my English teacher had some weird beef, and she told me once, like, her brother played for the Hamilton Hurricanes or something, and I was playing for the Hurricanes at this point in grade 12, and I think I had to miss some of her classes for football here and there, and especially when basketball came around, I was definitely saying, fucking peace. I shall be playing basketball instead of coming to class today. And there's just beef, and, like, I get it. It happened even in university. Some teachers just don't give a fuck about athletic endeavors, and they think it's either a waste of time or that we're given way too much. And hey, fuck, I get it. I had my girlfriend in high school was openly jealous. I don't even know, upset with me, the fact that I was like getting grace, like I think it was like a 5% grace on my grades to get into my program. So I think at the time, and might even sound low now, but to get into Western's kinesiology program, I think it was 86 or 87. I think it was 87. No, maybe 86. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He had to get an 86 average to get into the program. I had a 5% grace, so I only actually had to get an 81. I think I finished high school with like an 84 average or something like that, so I didn't really need it, but I still used it to boost my way in, and it was good, and I got a bursary and all these different things. But, you know, you have to get over 80 anyway to get any like entrance scholarships and all these different things. So regardless, she was like, oh, like she was jealous or whatever of that. Like, oh, you get all this free shit. You're not doing anything. It's like, well, I'm playing sports. Yeah, obviously I chose to play sports, but I've been playing for my school. Like, it's not like I wasn't fucking playing for anyone. If my school wasn't there, I wouldn't have been playing for them, I guess. Or if my school didn't have a fucking football team, yeah, all I would have done is played sports. Or sorry, if my school didn't have sports, obviously, yeah, all I'd do was fucking academics. But they have the sports, so what the fuck is it for? They had the music class. I did the music class. If I was a million different persons and I had a time turner, I would try to do everything. I look back at school. I wish I'd tried drama, right? Because like that would have been fucking cool. In my high school, we had a cool little like television studio. You could learn to like do film and TV shit. So fucking shit was cool. But some people are stuck the fuck up. And anyway, this teacher wasn't all that nice to me. She didn't like fail me or anything. I just didn't get a very good grade in her class and ended up just taking a English summer school course to boost my marks a little bit. But anyway, she wasn't chill. But long story short, for my ISU or whatever, the culminating project for the class, we got to like pick a novel to do like an in-depth study on. And up until that point, you know, obviously you were kind of given, whether it was Shakespeare or whatever the novel you were reading that year, you were kind of given in. And we did look, I think we did, what did we do in grade 12? Not King Lear. I think Hamlet. I think we did Hamlet in grade 12. And then the novel we all got to choose, and then it was like our own thing. So anyway, I chose Frankenstein. There was something about it, you know, it was interesting. It's a classic novel, and I was interested to know about like the real story. And it's kind of it's a literary classic, 1818. It's been fucking studied to death. but it was really cool to look into it more and learn. And a part of the project was kind of learning about the background and everything. And I mean, the book itself has this big foreword that talks about a little bit of Mary Shelley's life and the background of the book. Like I said, written when she was really young, and it was written in this like when everyone was out in I think it was in the French Alps or something. Anyway, they were all chilling, and they were like, "Hey, let us all write ghost stories, and let us see who can spookily wookily, whatever the fuck they were talking about." They like, let's write a ghost story. Lord Byron was like, what would happen? Like, who's gonna write the best story here? And fucking Mary Shelley whips out this unbelievable tale, and she's talking a lot about like science and stuff, and at this time, and it's alluded to in the book, in the movies, and all these different things. It's alluded to of like, science is still kind of on the cusp. Not everyone's totally buying it. Obviously there's like medicine being practiced, but certain brands of science were still kind of seen as woo woo and kooky, and electricity wasn't really known all that well in 1818. No one knew what the fuck was going on. But there was early tests on like how, like, I mean, obviously Thomas Jefferson or whoever the fuck was like capturing lightning in a bottle, but it wasn't like it was still in its infancy and stuff, and they figured out how they could do it. And like there was always like a little chemical batteries and stuff where you could make like little low voltage shit happen, especially when they were like testing but like in biology class or in anatomy, and testing the systems and seeing that that there is some type of electrical impulse in the body. And they were like testing this with like frogs or something, and the frogs were dead, but they realized that if they somehow manipulated the tissue with electricity, the legs would still work. And this was like, this kind of sparked this idea, I think, with Shelley and many people, is that like, is like electricity essentially the spark of life, and that if someone dies and you can just put enough electricity back into them, they might walk. Again, it seems like a pretty simple idea, but at the time it was revolutionary. It seems like a naive idea, because obviously that's not totally correct. But like, when was Nikola Tesla fucking ripping around? He was like doing his fucking thing. Yeah, he was alive like after all this shit. So like, it's even still like, electricity is like not really like, it's not in every town. Thomas Edison hasn't done like, we're still trying to, like, people are still figuring this shit out a little bit. And it's kind of like, she used all these like new ideas and new principles, scientific, the cutting edge that she was just kind of plugged into, and just wove this unbelievable tale. And talking a lot about, obviously, I think a lot of reflections of her and Percy, her husband, of this like, and it almost was potentially, it saw the future in some way, and it was like this precursor, and almost like, unbeknownst to Shelley, it was like foreshadowing how maybe she would have been seen by Percy eventually, because again, in the story, obviously the story's been adapted many times. We have this really good idea of what the Frankenstein story is, but the original story has very specific elements to it. And of course, there's a big struggle between Victor Frankenstein, the doctor who invents the creature, the monster, Frankenstein's monster. It is okay to call him Frankenstein, because now in like the fucking ether, or whatever you want to call it, in like Hollywood at least, they call the monster Frankenstein. So if you do, and some fucking academic comes at you and is like, it's actually Frankenstein's monster, you can tell them to fuck off, because Hollywood made it so. It was adapted, and changed it. Yeah, of course, in the original book, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it is the creature. So I guess if you're talking about the book, but if you ever just are referencing the monster, or like the guy with the bolts on his neck, that's Frankenstein. Like, don't be fucking piece of shit. So anyway, but in the book, Frankenstein's monster, is obviously grappling and learning all these different fucking ways of life, and being, she kind of looked at it like, as although Victor Frankenstein revived this man from death, he was an amalgamation of all these different parts. I mean, it had one brain, I think, but it was an amalgamation of all these parts, that he became like a completely new being, and it had to like learn life all over, and it was like very hungry for knowledge, and it was a new living being. And I think that was this representation, the way Mary wrote it, as like, it's almost like Percy created or allowed for a platform for Mary to come out, and she shone, and she was fantastic what she did, but she had to release it like under his name, so he still had this weird control. And I don't know, I'm probably jumping the gun here, because I'm not really sure about the specifics of things. But again, it was almost like this thing where it's like, he created something that is maybe even greater, and then maybe, or in his mind, he created something. Obviously, Mary, in her own right, is exalted to the levels that she is exalted to, and rightfully so. But he might have seen it that way, and it was like, I gave you this power, and now you're fucking passing by. Who knows, right? But anyway, she at least had to release her book under his name, because it was fucking old timey shit, like I mentioned. And it just is maybe this strange and eerie reflection of her relationships. And again, just like people and relationships with your own parents, even your own creators, being brought into this world and kind of being left to fucking your own devices sometimes. And I think everyone struggles with that, no matter how great your situation is at home. Like, there are times where you feel like you are fucking trying to figure it out, or that, you were never asked to be brought into this world or whatever. There's all those like kind of interesting little plays and nuances, or I should say homages to those feelings. But again, the whole story is brilliant. I think it's really cool. I've always felt akin to, the monster as like this big hulking being. Not only that, just being a big hulking being, but feeling that kind of like, am I fitting into these places? And like, I was brought into this world and given this body or whatever, but like, do I want it, or like, is it really me? Who really am I? I think it's beautiful the way the monster kind of learns through observation. And anyway, there's just beautiful stuff in the book. It's incredible. It is eerie and scary, obviously, because it's very visceral, and deals with this, like, obviously, like, it's the biggest part about Frankenstein, I find, from the novel's perspective, is that we got to see the creation of a ghost, essentially. We got to see the creation of a monster, where a lot of stories, this monster already exists. We never really concerned ourselves with where or who the fuck the monster was. But this guy who had good intentions, Victor Frankenstein, this overall morally pretty sound character, took care of himself, was a doctor, smart, healthy young man. You kind of see him all of a sudden go down this path of obsession and all these different things, and once he creates his monster, he fucking hates it, and there's all these different things. So like, there's so many different perspectives, as the book takes those different perspectives too, right? So it's just a really cool way of looking at an origin of a monster kind of coming in, and seeing how even through the best intentions, this shit can happen when you're fucking around with life and death and trying to play God, and again, all the different ways you can extrapolate like what happens from there. But again, like I said, that story has been, adapted and readapted and adapted in a million different times, and a lot of the original movies were, I think one of the first adaptations was obviously a little bit closer and truer to the book, but slowly but surely Hollywood kind of morphed things and changed things over and over. And again, even just like with the name, right? And it kind of morphed through like Frankenstein, like the Bride of Frankenstein, because it's like the bride isn't the bride of Dr. Frankenstein, it's the bride of the monster. So that was like kind of like all of a sudden he is now Frankenstein, the monster itself. But there's been play adaptations, really cool ones all the way through, and one of my favorite Frankensteins is actually the one from Van Helsing. There's a really actually cool Frankenstein in that movie, but not all that literarily accurate. But yeah, some great ones. Robert De Niro played a great Frankenstein's monster, I guess you could say. In Mary, it was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, so that was pretty accurate to the book, I'd say. But Guillermo del Toro, who seems like a perfect director from it, has now taken the mantle as the last great director to direct a Frankenstein movie. And Guillermo has actually been trying to make this movie for a long time. He's been trying to make it since the 90s, and it just never really worked out. The script was weird. He didn't have enough fun. He didn't have the right people, whatever. And again, it seems perfect. And he was kind of raised watching, these old monster movies, the classics, the Werewolf, the Mummy, and all these Frankenstein movies too. So I thought it was just it was kind of a match made in heaven. And great cast. Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein, Jacob Elordi as the creature, the monster. Mia Goth actually played two parts. She played Lady Elizabeth Harlander, which is actually William's fiance, Dr. Frankenstein's brother, who Victor has all these feelings. And then she also plays Baroness Claire Frankenstein, who was Victor's late mother. So that was a really cool kind of casting and writing decision to kind of like play into this kind of Oedipus complex. I guess that's for Oedipus is for dads, or where you want to kill your dad because you love your mom, whatever it is. Anyway, all these kind of like mommy dearest type shits. And yeah, there's all, grappling with death, grappling with your own relationship with your parents. And I think there was like a lot of catharsis. It seemed like there was a lot of catharsis actually in Del Toro's direction of this movie. He even talks about like doing the whole scene, when you're in the lab, and he was very adamant about like having a real set up. So like they're in this set, and so everyone's into it. And he said like, after they didn't really do like an It's Alive thing so much, when that doesn't happen in the book either, I think. But anyway, Guillermo felt like really different after he said there was a cathartic moment where his whole life seemingly has built up to this moment of him finally making Frankenstein. He finally did. And it sounds like did it to his the way he wanted to do. But, it just seemed like he finally did he did it, and now he's going to be moving on to some new things potentially. And again, you know what, I always respect, there's always directors that are kind of like, they find their niche and they stick with it, but like directors who can kind of bounce around and make movies that you would seemingly wouldn't expect from that director, you can only appreciate that even more, I think. So we'll see what the future holds for Del Toro. But again, overall, if I can just talk about that and all that work that Del Toro did, it really turned out to be a fantastic movie. It's a little weird because it's a Netflix joint, so like I think that there was some producer, fucking leaning over Del Toro's shoulder, making some final cut decisions that maybe Del Toro didn't want to do, or who knows, because there was a couple just weird parts. Definitely some overuse of CGI in my opinion, but Netflix has a tendency of doing that. They just fucking say, yeah, use the fucking CGI, and I don't know. Who knows? Either way, so there was like a couple times like looking at it, it's like, was this intended because they thought people were going to be watching this on their home screen because it's Netflix, or because it's going to be up on a big screen? It was hard to say. Some shots for sure, and some shots you're like, that looks a little weird or whatever it is. But I thought the acting was great. I thought Jacob Elordi did a fucking tremendous job actually as the creature and the monster, and like kind of learning and being like, this newborn fucking baby deer kind of thing. But the way he learned from the family and just became, and just some of the lines, and the lines are fantastic from the movie too, and ones that Mary Shelley wrote and stuff, but just it's like one of them, at least I can think of off the top of my head. It's like, to you I am an abomination, but to me I only am, kind of thing, and like shit like that, like where it's just like, it's this identity thing. It's so big and heavy on like, who am I? What am I? You fucking turned me into this thing. You created me, and you just want to fucking throw me away. Like it's like, kind of like an angsty, sounds like an angsty teenager or whatever. But these are feelings and situations, and just general relatable feelings that a lot of people have, right? So anyway, really well done. I thought it was it was pretty close to the original story, I thought. I mean, I haven't read I'm going to listen to the audiobook again just because I've been inspired. But again, just like, Mia Goth was kind of interesting in it. If there was any other harangues, she was just kind of being Mia Goth, and just being. But again, I thought it was really cool using her as both the mother and the love interest. And yeah, it was just it's such an interesting story, and Guillermo did an excellent job doing it. Suggest seeing it in theaters if you still can, but if not, check it out on Netflix or whatever. But definitely really cool. Looked great. It wasn't like, it was definitely very Guillermo del Toro, but it wasn't like too many like weird creatures. Obviously he created the creature, but he looked really good. Like it wasn't, it looked like he kind of crawled out of a Tool music video, but really cool. The guy fucking had cool flow at certain points, and dressed up nice and sick. Like the jacket at one point actually looked exactly like De Niro's jacket in his adaptation. So it was almost like there was nods to some of the older ones, or some of the Frankensteins who have come before him, and all this stuff. So super cool movie. I'd say go fucking check it out for sure. I think it's a really, really great movie, and let me know what you think. Maybe it's not 100% perfect, but we'll see. If that's the last time Del Toro will do any weird monster stuff, we'll see what that means too. So anyway, thank y'all for listening. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. Hit me in the comments. Hit me back just to chat. Whenever. Talk to you soon. Love ya. Peace.